This evening, we're going to be presenting on guilt and shame as it relates to kinship guardians and kinship care. My name is Robin Troncoso. I'm one of the fostering family program managers. I'm currently um, managing the central region and also the northern region of our state. And joining me this evening is Amelia Andrioni. She is a community support worker. She's been with our agency since July, I believe. And she also, in addition to working with us full time, she's also a graduate student working on her marriage and family therapy degree. So, for this evening, we are going to be talking about just experiencing guilt and shame as kinship guardians. We'll talk about family systems and the impact of kinship care on couples and the family system. And then we'll end with some supports and resources. So, when we think of kinship care, one of the images that comes into mind is just this emotional roller coaster. For those of you that are kinship guardians, you know that most of you have had the experience where for your taking on children into your house wasn't maybe like just this planned thing. It was more in the moment. You know, there was a need. You're very consistent providers and caregivers, so you allow these children to come into your home. But just tons of emotions that go along with kinship care. We want to just really just normalize this because experiencing guilt and shame is very common for kinship guardians. So, some kinship guardians may feel responsible for the parent's loss of their child. Feelings of guilt and shame may also arise from feeling responsible for the disruption of the family system. Caregivers might also experience guilt that a child is more attached to you as the kinship caregiver than the actual biological parent. There could be guilt and shame regarding like reporting information that may negatively impact the parent, such as something has gone on, maybe the children are at risk, and you've had to call CYFD. And sorry, just a second, just letting somebody in. Thank you. Yeah, so just having to involve other people or reporting this information about the biological parent definitely makes you feel guilty and can also have some like feelings of shame attached to it. So one kinship caregiver says, "It was a very sad and emotional day. Our daughter's parental rights were severed in court this morning. I knew it was coming as we were sure she wouldn't show up to court today, but I had no idea it would affect me the way it has." Another way that guilt and shame arises for kinship guardians is having to explain why the children are no longer with their parent. That's just such a huge and heavy conversation and very unique to kinship care. There could be feelings of betrayal or disloyalty towards the parent, feeling like you're having to, as you're taking these children into your home, you're really kind of, again, feeling like you're betraying the bio parent. But also, too, in terms of that, that's placing the needs of this child over the needs of their parent. And I feel like with all of the kinship guardians that I've worked for, like whenever I'm looking at family systems, I feel like our kinship caregivers are always in like this really like almost a tug of war. You're really wanting to be over here to protect the child, but you're also concerned about the bio parent as well. So just, and here's your heart being pulled back and forth, really trying to support the whole system too, as much as you can, but definitely prioritizing the child as well. And putting safety first. So another quote that we have, when an adult, when an adult child violates our values, makes poor choices, or gets in deep trouble, we often question our own parenting abilities. So really, and I'm sorry, just going back on this piece is really like, of course, when you're, especially again, if the bio parent is your child, you're taking responsibility for that. It feels very personal if your child is not successfully parenting and you've had to step in. Very heavy stuff. Another place where guilt and shame may arise is having to request support from public services. A lot of our caregivers who have taken on this role of caring for the children don't really receive any formal supports. So it might be very, or maybe have never had to rely on anybody outside of their family for financial support before. So not only is the process confusing, it also can be very, it's sometimes it's hard to ask for help or even know what type of public assistance is available. So another area is giving more attention to the new child in your home. And this is in relation to, if the other children in the family, really, again, whatever's going on that occurred in which you had to bring this child into your house, that child, with what, if there's like a crisis situation, of course you're taking all of your energy and you're putting it towards this child, which kind of leaves an imbalance, and we'll talk about in regards to like the family system. um, So another one, which kind of ties back to the quote we just talked about, is again, feeling responsible for the actions of the biological parent. One caregiver said, "How could I have raised a child who can't take care of her own kids? Not just take care of them, but she abused them too. My other children have been able to raise their own children, but she preferred drugs and partying. What did I do wrong to make her want to do this?" So it feels very, very personal, and of course, we exist in systems. Our happiness also is dependent upon seeing the success of those in our family as they are achieving goals, but also feeling like this woman, taking it really like the responsibility is her part. What did I do wrong? When we're seeing other family members not succeeding. So another issue where guilt and shame kind of arise for some caregivers is these problems in the family being known publicly or outside the family. So we all know, New Mexico's, even though we have some bigger cities like Albuquerque, Las Cruces, it's still small town. Even in, I mean, I'm in Albuquerque, so even in a city that's just like so huge, so many people, everybody like knows things in the community, right? So um you know I've seen news stations, for example, that will put a list either on their website of like people that have been arrested or anything like that. So having your neighbors know about any issues that the biological parent has had, whether it's like involvement with CYFD or a case in the media, that can be very embarrassing, and making you feel like you don't you don't want your neighbors to know certain things. So definitely it can make it very difficult. Also being blamed for the biological parent's shortcomings. If people don't know the full story, they don't know like the extent that you've gone to really provide help to the biological parents. People can be judgmental and just say, oh, what are they not getting, or what did they do, to make their child turn out this way, when it's actually like you've been doing everything that you can to prevent this child from going down this pathway, kind of like the quote just a second ago where the lady said, my other children are doing fine, I have, but I don't know why this one is off track, so guilt can actually show up in our body in several ways. We can have insomnia or trouble sleeping. It can lead to having like upset stomach, nausea, digestive issues. We might have stomach pain, muscle tension, a lot of anxiety, right? Head pain, tearfulness. So, some things that we can do to overcome this guilt and shame is really acknowledging the emotion, asking yourself how this feeling is impacting your functioning, asking yourself if this feeling is leading to um, manipulation or compromising the child's well being, and identifying what guilt and shame triggers you have. So, we want to talk about identifying your own buttons because even when we're faced with situations where, like, for example, um we're not able to help the biological parent at this time, we what we can do is really make sure that we ourselves as the caregivers are really fortified and emotionally grounded. So one thing we can do is really work on identifying our own buttons, right? So really which really prevents people from like having the ability to trigger us. So when we think about buttons, we want to ask ourselves, what pushes your buttons? So perhaps a grandparent feels guilty when their adult child blames them for taking their children away. We also want to think about what's the intention of the person pushing the button. Is it because they want to blame the caregiver, which prevents the bio parent from having to take responsibility for their own actions? And then we want to think about, what is your new planned response? So, setting boundaries and not engaging in conversation with this bio parent about this topic. I don't know if you've ever had this experience with somebody where it's just this constant like struggle in terms of like communication. Um, and I mean, as something that we all know and experience as a very close knit family, we all know each other's buttons. We all know how to push each other's buttons, more than obviously like people that are outside our family. So when we're thinking about this, it just gives us a little more power in terms of like identifying a new planned response. Because when you start um, not allowing yourself to fall into that pattern of like, the same routine, by setting boundaries and really just not engaging, it changes the whole the whole situation. um, so another example, again, when we're thinking what pushes your buttons, maybe a bio parent complains that their child loves the caregiver more, right? So they're kind of feeling, the bio parent is kind of feeling they're sad, and it's definitely a sad situation when children have to go live outside their family because the bio parents are not able to take care of them. So we really want to be thinking, what's the intention of this person pushing the button? And a question is like, for this situation, is the bio parent simply processing the impact of their actions on their child and the family, or is this an attempt to manipulate the caregiver? Um, and then again, we're thinking, what's the new what is your new planned response? So we want to remind the bio parent here, when we kind of go into if this is ever occurring, reminding the bio parent that love isn't an either or. We're able to love more than one person at a time, even if this child is living with you and loves you, they also have space in their heart to love their parents, their siblings, their aunts, their uncles, their other grandparents, or whoever, and their friends, of course. But also, too, we want to again remain consistent with visitation plans that are in place and hold clear boundaries. So, really looking at these situations as they're occurring, I love the idea of thinking of the intention because then that can help you kind of guide you, and it gives you a little bit of time to like make these like informed and thoughtful like responses instead of getting heated in the moment, you know, because again, as we're talking about custody and you know, it can be such a heated conversation. So, and then we have another quote here. The greatest impact of raising my grandson has been with my own biological children and my grandchildren. I desperately love my other grandkids, but focus is on the one we are raising, and we are not as available as we would like to be. We spend as much time as possible together so my grandson can have a younger family influence and a relationship with his cousins the same age, but it is still strained. My adult children have real issues with their younger sister that I can't help.
Again, my name is Amelia Andrioni, and I'm a CSW here at Southwest. So we're going to shift the conversation a little bit from shame and guilt, and we're going to tie it into family systems. And so a family system is described as the separate parts that work together to create a whole. And what's really important to keep in mind when we're thinking about family system is that families work as a unit and function as a whole rather than the individual parts. The way that I like to think about this is a car, right? So you have your engine, your tires, your brakes, your steering wheel. One part can't work without the other. Everything in the car needs to be working in tandem with one another so that you can get from point A to point B safely. And that's the same way that I like to think about a family system is everybody's working together. Everybody has a role so that everybody can operate the best that they can. So within family systems, we have something called a subsystem. And all that is a subsystem is part of a larger family system that have a distinct dynamic that's connected back to the family. So some examples of this are parents, siblings, grandparents, cousins. Sometimes a subsystem can be, bio mom and their child, or auntie and the grandfather. They're systems within the family system. This is a really great infographic that I like to use when I'm talking about, systems theory or really just systems in general. You see at the very core of it, you have the individual, and that's you as a single individual person. And then as we get a little bit broader, we have our nuclear family. That's the family that you live with, that you interact with on a consistent basis. And then outside that, you have your extended family. Maybe that's your cousins or your family that lives down the street or the family that you see for holidays, those types of things. And then broader in the orange, you have the social level. I like to think of this as like your teachers, the person that works off at the post office that you see every week, people in your greater community, that in your social system. And then the last one is your multicultural level. Those are things like healthcare. How is healthcare systems impacting you on the smaller level? Or laws, things that politicians deal with. And so as you can see, everything is related to one another that, at one point or another affects the individual. All right, so caregivers need to operate as a united front and model the rules that a family needs to follow. And so again, we're shifting that conversation and really emphasizing that caregivers, whoever is, the head of the family, is there to be a united front to model the rules for whoever is living in your house, whether that be your grandchildren, your niece and your nephews, your children. And again, those caregivers can be anybody. No one family looks like the other. So that could be grandma, grandpa, auntie, uncle, mom and dad, a combination of any of them. So right here is a really great analogy of what healthy boundaries and a healthy family system looks like. And it's just a triangle. And at the top of the system, you have the caregivers. And you have your caregivers, they're setting the rules, they're modeling expectations, and what they're doing is that they are giving the family a blueprint of what is expected and appropriate for the family. And at the bottom, you have the children, right? Because children don't have the cognitive capacity to run a home. So you have the caregivers on top leading the family, and you have the children at the bottom following. Perfect. So caregivers support the family system. And again, they create balance by setting clear boundaries and expectation so that everybody in the family knows what is expected of them. And what I'd really encourage you guys to keep in mind here is that consistency is key, especially if caregivers haven't always been consistent with rules or expectations for their family. Being clear about family expectations helps everybody be on the same page. No one's in the dark. No one feels left out, and everybody knows what's expected of them so that your greater family system can operate well. No one's feelings are hurt, and things are running smoothly. Oops, I might have skipped one. There we go. All right, so setting clear boundaries is like playing a video game. Stick with me. So I don't know if you have ever experienced this, but I wonder if you've ever asked yourself, why is it that my child can focus for hours on video games, or they can scroll on their phone for hours? But when I ask them to do something, it's a fight and they can't focus, but they can focus on their phone for days at a time. Well, and what I like to think about is video games and phones, any kind of electronic, they are clear and predictable. The incentives are super strong, and they confront your adolescent or your child with success in real time. And the way that I like to think about this is if they're playing a video game, if they press B, their character is going to jump. If they, run off the road on Mario Kart into the lake, their character has to start again. It's very clear, it's very predictable, and it always delivers a clear consequence, positive or negative. So I'd like to take that framework and really try to integrate it into our families, right? And get really curious about how we can create the same kind of predictability at home, and get curious about the positive consequences and the negative so that, who's ever at that top of that family system, it's clear, it's predictable, and whoever you're taking care of knows what's expected of them, just like a video game. Perfect. So some things to keep in mind, if I had to boil everything down into 4 quick little sentences, goals for families, would be to create some boundaries between all the subsystems. Make a clear distinction between the marital system and the subsystem, and really what that looks like, no matter what your family looks like, as long as the caretakers are on top. Even if you're a single caretaker, even if it's just grandma, even if it's just grandpa or auntie or whomever you are, a clear distinction of that system being upright. Again, having that effective parental hierarchy, being right on top, and having a family structure that promotes development and growth of individuals and families. So if we were to flip it right on upside down, this is an example, or just, a quick analogy of what an unclear boundary and an unhealthy family system would look like. So children and adolescents, plain and simple, just do not have the cognitive development to run a house and make all of the important decisions that it takes to run a house. And I know that many of you have wonderful, smart, intelligent, respectful kids and adolescents that you take care of. We call you guys on a monthly basis, and we get to hear about all of the wins that are happening. And although they are wonderful and great, they are not adults. And so it's very, very important to keep them in the role that they're very much designed to be. In that kid role, in that adolescent role, where they get to follow the expectations that you are modeling. And I really do want to acknowledge that it might be really hard to set those boundaries, especially if there's some shame or some guilt around what's happened, or if there has been some traumatic events that have happened. Absolutely, that can be very, very, very tricky. But here's what I'll tell you as an encouragement. Children and adolescents crave consistency. They truly do. And so with everything that changes in our world, with changes at school and changes in our political climate, or changes with COVID, or just what's gone on in the last 18 months, I think it's very important that who was ever at the top of that caregiver parental subsystem, that they're creating the consistency at home so that kids feel safe, they feel cared for, and everybody wins. Perfect. So kinship caregivers experience a higher level of parenting stress due to the unique challenges of raising grandchildren in their late adulthood, and for all of the reasons that Robin talked about earlier. And I very much understand that this might not have been the way that you imagined spending your retirement or in your later years, but we're so grateful that you've stepped up and that you are taking care of these kids and of your family. It's an incredibly brave and admirable thing to do. And in that same breath, I would love to open up the conversation to you all with everything that you're doing. And I imagine that your schedules are crazy. How are you filling your cup? And really shift the conversation to self-care, because I think sometimes when we think of self-care, it's going to the spa and getting a facial or a bubble bath. And yes, those things are all really wonderful self-care, but I think self-care can look like, it's 3 p.m. in the afternoon and you just picked up the kids and, oh my gosh, I have to feed them again. I have to feed them dinner and life is crazy. How am I taking care of myself in those smaller everyday moments? And so, well, thank you so much for everybody who talked about their self-care and all the ways that they fill their cup. And I think as a kinship guardian, and really as just people, I also would invite you to be curious about how are you taking care of yourselves as a couple, if you are in that couple partnership. I know lots of times we have grandma and grandpa, auntie, uncle, really rolling up their sleeves and stepping into that role with kids that are young and have lots of energy, which can be very exhausting. And so not only taking care of yourself, but filling your cup as a couple. And I love the first example that we got about going outside for 15 minutes in your car, starting out small, grandma and grandpa are going to go outside for 10 minutes. We're going to set the timer on the oven. So you will know when that 10 minutes is up. If you need us for an emergency, we'll be out there, but we'll see you in 10 minutes. And starting off small, that way your couple subsystem, your caregiver subsystem is also being cared for, and that cup is being refilled as well. All right, so we already had some great reflection. And then these are just some great activities that us at Fostering Family kind of talked about some self-care activities, going on a walk, reading a book, journaling, getting outside for exercise or inside. I know that there's lots of great free resources on YouTube for exercise. I know the colder months are coming. Listening to music, talking with a friend, talking with your partner, going out on a date, spending time with your partner, connecting with a church or community group, and connecting with other families. There's no right or wrong way to do self-care. Self-care is when you are doing something for you that fills you up. So we could probably create a list 10 times this long, but these are just some ideas that I would definitely invite you to try out if you are struggling with that self-care piece.
So something, as we're talking about self-care, I wanted to just bring this piece in here as we're thinking about our relationships, is really just assessing your family circle. Again, as we are pulling more of our energy and our resources to support one area of our family, we also kind of want to think about, what it looks like with our relationships with the other families, other relationships in our family. So is there, as you're thinking about yourself and how you exist with all the other people in your family, really thinking about, are there any connections that have changed since you become a kinship guardian? And then are there any connections that need to be strengthened or even reestablished? Because again, bringing that child in requires a lot of time, energy, emotions. So, if you're needing to, once once everything is kind of in a good place, maybe going back to see, do you need to give any other children in your family like more support, like maybe if you're a grandparent and you have other grandchildren, to make sure that those relationships are sustaining, or even any of your siblings, or anybody in the family. So just it's kind of good just to keep this little diagram in mind as you're going forward, kind of just to assess. And then we just wanted to talk about some supports this evening and resources. So again, through fostering families, if you need any referrals for mental health, we can help you get, um, behavioral management services, referrals in place. We can help you get set up with case management through our agency, peer support services, individual family. And for some, we can even look into some school-based therapy if it's depending on what county and what city you're in. We do offer a support group through our program. So if you would like to participate, we have an English peer support group. You can contact Jesse Ortega, or you can also let us know. We can also help get you connected. We also have a Spanish peer support group. Right now, I have to say it is on pause. Our Spanish speaking facilitator just left. So right now we have a list. So hopefully soon we'll get that up and running. But if you're interested, please feel free to reach out to Itzel Barrera. Or again, you can let us know, put your name in the chat. We can help get you connected. Currently, our English peer support group is meeting the first and third Wednesday of the month. So it is like a nice ongoing group. We also have our virtual trainings, which as you have found because you're here this evening. And again, it's the first Tuesday of the month. So our next one will actually be December 2nd. We will be presenting, we'll actually have a guest speaker, Dr. Pierce, who is our founder and CEO of Southwest Family Guidance Center. And he will be presenting Trauma and Resilience for Kinship Guardians, Part 2. He actually came to our first series last year and presented like Part 1. So he's going to go a little more into resilience this time. So we'll also be covering nutrition. We'll be talking about basic legal rights for kinship guardians. We'll talk about domestic violence, resources for immigrant and minority families, and then substance abuse in the family. And then we just wanted to take a moment, as the holidays are coming, this can be a hard time for some of our families, especially when children are, just recently placed with a kinship guardian. So as we're thinking about this, really kind of creating a celebration of caring. So really taking time to celebrate your family right where you're at right now. And so also, as dynamics within the family have been shifting, also taking time and again, as we're talking about, love isn't an either or, right? So really taking time to maybe create new celebrations while honoring the past ones as well. So on that note, we do have our fostering family resource page. You can just go to fosteringfamily.com. Tons of resources by so many different topics. But also if you're not currently receiving services through our program and you're a kinship guardian, feel free to sign up for services. You'll get, we'll do a triage, see what kind of needs you have, and then get you started.